women are very, very productive. And I think that as we see, and as it's been written about in books, and data sets have been created, and state departments have been working on this, and there's some initiatives. Women in the workforce and women executives in the workforce are directly correlated with the GDP increase per capita in that country. That's a known fact that's been followed and watched very, very carefully, to the point that now there is a bit of affirmative action quota being written and being developed in mainly starting in the European, Scandinavian, and Australian and subcontinent, where women now have to be on public boards of public companies. So I don't know if we all agree with quotas. I'm not really a big fan of quotas, but I do think we need to get some sort of a reset, and this is not a bad way to do it. And I'm seeing it happening in the workforce. So I think there's some pressure being put on public companies to have women on the boards. The question now is, how do you have women that are leaders in their fields get to a level where they actually are recognized as senior executives? And I think to some degree the onus is on women to make sure they ask for that. And it's not easy to ask for that, because we become complacent, and women aren't great at asking for, promotions or asking for more pay increases, et cetera. And traditionally we have not been in a position to ask for those. So one of the most important things is to find other women to be able to promote and to be able to continue to foster that diversity. I'll give you an example. At Continental, I just attended the Senior Executive Convention, which was 400 fairly rowdy German engineers in a room about 4 times the size of this. And they had just hired the first woman for the supervisory board, which was a woman that had 15 years of HR responsibility at Volkswagen, now is serving on the supervisory board at Continental. And she talked very, very strongly and with a lot of gravitas about the importance of bringing women in, and diversity, not just women, but diversity into automotive, because there are mega trends happening right now, as my peers were discussing, and women can see these and act differently. If women were involved in the decisions behind a seatbelt, I'm sure we wouldn't have a seatbelt that crisscrossed our chest line the way it does, in a fairly barbaric way. If women had been involved with where to put a cup holder in a car, I wouldn't have put it in the center dash where my 11-year-old is constantly fiddling up and changing the dial and spills coffee almost every other morning. I would have probably found a place to put on the left-hand side of the vehicles, which now you're seeing in some more sort of more inventive creations. So there's lots of other opportunities for women to become much more involved in contributing to historically male-dominated industries. So I think, in answer to your question, I see the responsibility partly as a woman executive to bring other women up, serve as role models, mentors, and continue to network and provide networking opportunities like this one here, where we are in a position to network and see women coming in through the ceilings, and be able to do something creative about that in a positive way. One last note I'll leave you with: at Google, we sponsored a study trying to understand why we were stuck at this god-awful 17% of women or engineers in the company, and this is pretty much of a fixed number that doesn't seem to change year after year after year. And one of the studies showed something very interesting, and I think I shared this with some of you before the conversation today, that women who don't get interviewed by women in their first round of interviews don't get the second round. How interesting, right? So once they are interviewed by a woman and they get the second round, the correlation dropped off on the regressions. So it wasn't so important. But if women weren't interviewed by women for the first round, chances are they never made it to the second round. So think about that a little bit, and think about how we can start to adopt challenges and rules and principles and best practices in our own work that can foster sort of a more balanced association with results.